Ah, peeps, how you doing today, man? I am now in the Netherlands, in Holland, yes, and I'm in a town called Maastricht. Maastricht is a very beautiful place, a very old place, really. I really love it here. I love coming here. It's always a pleasure. And I lived here back in the day. For about 3 years or so I used to live here. So I know a little bit about the place. This bridge behind me is one of the oldest bridges in the Netherlands. It was actually featured on a postage stamp from the Netherlands back in the 1960s. Now this bridge here was actually built by the Romans. Initially it was a wooden bridge back in 50 AD. And then of course it grew to be a stone bridge. Now this bridge has been here in its form since 1298. In 1298 they actually finished and completed this bridge. And here it stands. Totally amazing structure. Now it's a pedestrian bridge. It's a lift bridge down on that end for boats that actually go up and down this Maas River. It's a pretty nice sight to see right here in town. But this is the town of Maastricht. Officially that town over there is called Wijk, but altogether pretty much everybody considers it Maastricht anyway. Beautiful place to see, really. Loving it. Ah yes, Maastricht. Maastricht is definitely one of the prettier cities in the Netherlands, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Other people have different opinions. If you do have a different opinion, make sure you leave it in the comment. Tell me what other city you think in this quaint little country is more beautiful than what you see here in Maastricht. It's a nice place. I enjoy walking around here. It's now what is it? 8 o'clock now. I'm on my way to get a coffee. I need a coffee this morning, have a bit of breakfast, and just walk around town. Not a lot going on, and I do appreciate the quiet of a typical Monday morning in Maastricht here in the Netherlands. It's very quaint, very quiet. It's actually quite cool. Maastricht is a very old little town. It's not the oldest in Holland. I think Nijmegen is the oldest town in Holland, but this definitely ranks up there as one of the oldest. Now, this place is basically founded back in 500 BC by the Celts, can you imagine? But it didn't actually become a city or a recognized town until it was around the 1200 AD. Now, this building behind me is built in the 1500s. Still standing here, and now it's a restaurant. And all the architecture all around Maastricht is very, very similar to that. They seem to have a regulation here in the city where you have to keep the outside of the building intact, regardless of what you're building, but the inside can be whatever it is you want. So you walk inside some of these buildings, and they're very nice and they're very modern, and they got a lot of things in them, and nice shops and everything. But the outside architecture remains as it was back in the 12th century. It's pretty nice. Well, there's one thing there is no lack of here in Maastricht, like there is in every other ancient city in Europe, is all these religious whoop-de-doos. Big cathedral here, big cathedral right there, and they're all over the place. I mean, here you can just walk past tons of them. Every time you turn a corner there is one. But the nice thing about these things is these are incredibly old. There's one around the corner from here that just happens to be under reconstruction, so it doesn't really look that pretty, but it was here in the 12th century. So it's been here forever. These things have been here since the 16th century. My God, right? I mean, that's a long time for these things to be around. And this is the main square here in Maastricht. Now typically here they have all the fairs and all the big things that go on here in the main square. And there's lots of restaurants and cafes over there. It's actually quite a pretty place, and it's a nice place to be if there's something going on. But now, of course, being that time of the year where it is COVID, they don't have a lot of things going on here. But it is still a very, very pretty place. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. And if you like all these religious gadgets, plenty of that to see. Every time I walk through these old towns in Europe, I can't help but imagine what life was like back in the 16th century or 12th century or whatever, when they're riding horses and carriages and stuff. And walking through places like this would have been absolutely amazing. Now I can imagine the garrisons here and the walls and the doors and the security and what have you that's protecting this old church. Now the church here that we're walking beside is the same one that you've seen from the square, built in the 14th century, called Basilica Saint-Savin or something like that. It's an absolutely beautiful place. Fantastic. Now this basilica and this archway and walkway and stuff was designed back in 1180. Could you imagine that? 1180. What kind of people, what kind of things were going on back then? It would have been a beautiful sight to see, man. This would have been a marvel of architecture back then. Hey, now some of you may know this and some of you may not, but these old European cities, built in the 12th century, 16th century like that, were always protected by these gigantic garrison walls. Now this actual wall was built back in 1230. Imagine that, and it's still standing here today. Survived all the wars and all the other things, and they used to defend themselves through these little holes and slots and everything from the people on the outside. Who those people on the outside were, I don't know. Maybe you can Google it and you can tell me. But when you go inside, Maastricht looks very much the same. And you can also see a lot of the remnants from what they used to have back in those days. Here, you can see the archway where the big wooden door was probably held that kept everybody out. And the people inside here were protecting themselves from the people outside. And the village remained exactly as it is. The beautiful thing about Maastricht is the fact that all the buildings remain as they were back in the 12th century and 13th century. It's really, really beautiful. Stunning to come see, stunning to come visit. So if you're ever in the south part of Holland, near Germany and Belgium and what have you, take a little trip over to Maastricht, walk around a little bit. It's a beautiful little town. A lot of historical value over here. You'll really appreciate it. Come for lunch, come for coffee, just come for a visit. Now here inside these garrison walls is where everybody took their stance and defended themselves against whoever they were defending themselves against. And it's pretty cool because if you were stationed here in this little arrow cutout, I don't know what it's called, but you'd be able to shoot the enemy as they came by. You'd be able to see them in any direction, here or there. There's the enemy. Dun, 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 dun. Now the nice thing about the way they developed these, the Romans I think came up with this, you can shoot this way and you can turn around and you can shoot your arrow that way. You had a very, very wide range of view. Whereas if somebody was shooting in at you, they would only have this little tiny slot to shoot in at you. So it would be very difficult to actually hit you, and it would be very easy for you to hit them. And that's how all these little turrets and gadgets and everything were designed back in those days. Quite clever, actually. Somebody put some thought into this, and it must have been actually hard to be able to design that. These archways are typically Roman, as I mentioned earlier. They came up with that whole idea. But you can see the arrow shooting areas over there as well as on this big gadget here. It's pretty cool. Very interesting stuff out here. I like it. Maastricht is a beautiful place, for sure. So this might be the last touristic thing I'm able to shoot for you guys today. Hope you guys liked it. And listen, always like and subscribe on this thing if you can, and leave a comment because I'd really, really appreciate it. It'd be a lot of fun. Ask me questions, maybe ask me to see something, ask me to do something next time. It'd be awesome. I'd love to oblige. It gives me something to do while I'm out here. Right? Enjoy it. You guys have a good one. I'm going to see you in a little bit. I'll show you a little bit more stuff if I can.